Okay,
Sure.
now I can ask you what I really wanted to ask you about Memoria. Hello, and welcome to Real Film Snobs. I am pleased to have back with me again Ernie Quiroz. Welcome to the show, Ernie.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And Ernie has returned from his travels where he just got back pretty recently, a week or so ago, or maybe it's been 2 weeks. Time is so weird now. Um,
Yeah.
from the Milwaukee Film Festival, where you were in the programming committee, and you saw a lot of great films, and we're going to talk about some of those today. But maybe you want to first just kind of talk a little bit about the film festival and what that particular one is like.
Sure. Yeah, this was my second year on the team at Milwaukee Film. This is their 14th year as a festival, and they've really grown. I've sort of been keeping track of them for a couple of years before I joined the team, and they've really become like a really great sort of regional festival. There's obviously like the Sundance and Tribecas and South bys and all that, but kind of one step below that are these fairly large regional festivals like Seattle. And then I would put Milwaukee as one of them, Cleveland, that sort of are sort of key stops on the festival circuit for a film as this kind of as they kind of roll out into the public. So the festival itself, this is the first year back in person. Obviously with COVID, we kind of did the virtual thing for a couple of years. So it was great to finally be back in person and welcome people into theaters. And a couple of films that we'll be talking about are films that need to be seen in person. These are films that are meant to be seen on the big screen and really benefit from that presentation. So it was good to be, and I went to Milwaukee for the very first time. So it was good to sort of hang out in the town and see their theaters, see their venues, amazing venues. The Oriental Theater is their flagship venue. This great, huge single screen movie palace, like built in the 20s.
Oh,
Uh,
the best period for movie palaces. Yeah.
Seats, they remodeled lost some seats, but still over 500 seats on the main floor. Another, I think, 300 in the balcony. It's this amazing. They took the pandemic to sort of as an opportunity. They were going to do some upgrades because this is a theater that had fallen in disrepair, as so many theaters do in the 70s and 80s. And then when they took it over, it was a little bit run down, and over the last almost 20 years have sort of been upgrading it and remodeling it, but there was needed some major upgrades. So they sort of took the pandemic as an opportunity to do that. So the festival was not only sort of a return to in-person screenings, it was sort of a grand reopening of this wonderful theater, the Oriental. So if you get a chance to Google Oriental Theater Milwaukee, and you can see sort of what they did. It was like $2 million
Oh, wow.
in renovation that took almost the 2 years. So it was great to sort of be part of the festival for that.
It must be really nice that people came back and got to see it in person and got to see the beautiful renovations of a beautiful old theater. It breaks my heart to see some of those old theaters closing over the years or just sitting in disrepair. So it's great when they get
Yeah,
renovated and get to
yeah,
be used again.
for sure. And attendance, we looked at our final attendance numbers, and attendance was down. We expected that. But the people that came out they absolutely loved the festival and were thrilled. And it was, who knows? We kind of caught this window of COVID of where things are maybe a little calmer. It seems like maybe it's on the uptick. So who knows? Timing, we kind of lucked out, and I didn't get sick, but I'm vaccinated, and it wasn't anything major. So um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good job on you getting vaccinated. And yeah, it seemed like the timing worked out because now it's on the uptick again. So that's good. And so we're going to talk about 4 movies today that I think all 4 are showed at the festival, if I'm
Hmm.
not correct, and
Yeah.
that I managed to see in other places, mostly at other festivals that were online and a few that are on streaming right now. So this is going to be a tricky one for people at home if you're trying to watch. Some of these movies are going to be harder to find than others. And the
Yeah.
first one, yeah, go
Oh
ahead.
no, sorry. Yeah, that's the thing is that the festival really curates a lot of the titles from other festivals, and
Hmm.
there's some local Milwaukee and Wisconsin stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that's on the festival circuit. And then I tried to limit my picks, and I think your picks to stuff that other people can see in other
Yeah,
markets.
we tried to at
Yeah.
least. I thought the first one I think is going to be the hardest for people to see, so we'll roll right into that one. Um, I did manage to get to see Memoria, which is our first film today, which Tilda Swinton plays a woman who starts to hear a loud banging sound and tries to find the source of that sound. And that's about as much plot, quote unquote, as you'll get in this movie. Memoria is a film by the great Thai director Apichatpong. I'm just going to say his first name because that's the only part of it I can say. He also goes by Joe. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce and butcher his last name. It's very long. It's many letters. Um, I've been a fan of his films for years. Almost no one else I know is a fan of his films, with very few exceptions. I maybe know one other person who likes his films, but he's an acquired taste. He's someone that film cinephiles love, and the general public barely knows he exists. So his previous films include Tropical Malady, Uncle Boon Me, Who Can Recall His Past Lives, which was in my top 5 the year it came out, and Cemetery of Splendor. Those are 3 of the ones I've seen, at least. Memoria really meant to be an experimental film exhibition. The studio Neon that released it has said that they'll never put it out on streaming. We'll see if that actually happens or not, and that they're only going to ever just going to continually show it in showcases across theaters. I could see why once I saw it. You really do need to experience it in the theater. So much of it is an auditory experience. So unless you have like a home theater with like amazing surround sound and a giant screen, but the other thing about this movie is you will definitely want to talk to someone after you see it, because I had, I think I saw it with my husband and we talked about it for like an hour after we saw it. So um, it's definitely not a plot driven film. It is like a lot of his films. I would almost view it as a meditation. There's a lot of Buddhism in a lot of his films. And so you really get that sense of calm. It's very slow moving. I'm not selling it very well. So maybe you can try, Ernie. I'm like, it's slow. It doesn't make any sense, but I loved it.
Well, yeah, I think if you're a fan of Apichatpong, you're in no matter what. If you're not, this is maybe not the movie that will make you a fan, that'll convert you. Let's be honest. This was my second time seeing it. I knew the first time was Heresy. It was a screener on my computer at home. I happened to get a screener link for a review, and obviously not the way to see a movie and not the way that he wanted to see this movie. I did watch it with headphones, so if at some point it does become available on home video, at least watch it with headphones, because that will at least put you into the correct
Hmm.
audio space to experience the film. But it is really a film. I was so glad this did play at the Oriental Theater. We had over 400 people at the theater, and this is the right way to see this film.
How many people walked out?
There were actually not I was
Oh,
expecting a
really?
number, and there weren't too many. I think people in the festival setting, I think they kind of knew, like, okay, well, this is a film festival, and maybe I'll give it a
Get
chance.
ready
Or,
for some
or
weirdness.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I think people will prepare. I also think that 10-minute sort of pre-show um, sort of thing, I think that really worked, sort of kind of prepare people and kind of put them in the right mental space to sort of
I love the pre-show. I almost love the pre-show
yeah.
more than the movie. It was just gorgeous.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, it comes with like films used to have an overture uh, before the actual film starts. It sort of starts with this silent 10-minute, almost like a slideshow, that is a nice way to transition from of just quieting your mind and sort of transitioning from the outside world into the world of this film, and to prepare you. So I think that did a lot to sort of get people ready. I did hear some people say, well, oh, well, that was pretentious, and the whole film was just, and that's the easy sort of critique on him. But at the end of the day, it was just an amazing experience to have in the theater because it was so immersive, because of the audio, because of the visuals, and the twist at the end. Um, it worked for me. It was shocking, but it worked. And I know for a lot of people, it did not work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, yeah, like you said, it's interesting to talk about that and discuss. And we won't spoil it, obviously, but
Right.
you
Yeah,
know,
I worked for me. My husband didn't love the twist at the end, although he ended up liking the movie, but that was actually
yeah.
his least favorite part of the movie. Yeah, it's interesting that the reason I asked about people walking out is because I read articles that at Cannes Film Festival where it premiered, about 50 people walked out and some people booed at the end, although they do that at Cannes, regardless.
That's
But you
almost
would
like a
think that though they would be ready for an experience like that.
that's almost like a badge of honor to get booed at Cannes.
Yeah, exactly,
Um,
exactly.
you know,
So, but his films, maybe it's because I'm an anxious person in general, but for me, like the calmness of them,
mhm.
while being so intellectually rigorous, I don't find it pretentious. I could see how some people do, and especially if you like a lot of action in movies, you're not going to like his movies. Um, but the beauty of his photography and the just amazing detail to things like sound and picture, and then the ideas going on in his films. There's a lot of ideas in this film. I mean, obviously, the fact that I talked about it with my husband an hour after the movie shows that, and I feel like I could talk about it forever. It's hard for us to talk about it without giving too much away, but I
Yeah,
will say
yeah.
that there was a lot of debate about what Tilda Swinton's character is, especially with the twist at the end, like her place in it, and is she and the character that she meets towards the end, the man
Hmm.
who feels like he has to limit what he sees because he remembers everything he's ever experienced in his life. And so
Hmm.
there's this
Hmm.
these connections to nature in his films are amazing as well. One thing that's really interesting is this is his first film that I'm aware that he made outside of his native Thailand. He made this film in Colombia, and he has faced a lot of censorship in his home country, which is really actually pretty funny to me because I mean, I haven't seen all of his old films, but I've seen the 3 or 4 of them. And to me, they're not very controversial. But I mean, he doesn't
Yeah.
have sex, drugs, rock and roll. I mean, they're very quiet, and but
Hmm.
I think the ideas going on are so subversive that the
Yeah,
government found him
exactly.
threatening.
Yeah, I think he's maybe not overtly political, but I think there's definitely some undertones in there that
Yeah, it's so
could be
subtle though. It
threatening.
surprises me they
Yeah.
would, that they would censor it. But he just got
Yeah.
tired of the censorship in Thailand, and so, but he also wants to be in a place, and why he chose South America is he loves the tropics. I mean, Tropical Malady is one of his
Hmm.
most well known movies. He likes the jungle and the contrast between urban settings and rural settings. So all of that is in his film. So
Hmm. Hmm.
definitely one I would try to seek out if it ever comes to your city. It was here in Salem, Oregon, at Salem Cinema for a week, and I'm so glad I saw it. A lot of people missed out on it, which is really sad for them. So, anyway.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, it's definitely a film that needs to be experienced. It's almost more, as a movie, I liked it, but as an experience, I think I liked it even more, and
Hmm.
especially in a festival setting. And honestly, I think that's why a lot of people showed up, and whether they liked it or not, they got to have an experience.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's why you go to the films a lot of times. So,
Why you go to films?
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So the next one I know is a movie we talked about a little bit before because it made your top 10
It made
list,
my
but
top
now I
10.
finally got to see it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and this also you're going to notice a theme, I think. This is also a film that's an experience, and I think benefits from the big screen presentation and having that auditory and visual experience. And that's The Blind Man Who Did Not Want to See the Titanic. And let me double check the director. That is Teemu Nikki. So this was number 2 or 3 on my list last year of
It
top
was very
10.
high. Yeah.
Very high. And again, this was a film I finally watched it on the big screen. I loved it on my computer, but even more so on the big screen because this is a film This is essentially a film about a blind man, or a man who's very, very visually impaired, who decides to go see his girlfriend. And he's a movie guy before he lost his sight, and he's a big John Carpenter fan, and he's a fan of sort of genre films.
Mm-hmm.
And his girlfriend is, a big fan of the Titanic, and talk about it. And he's absolutely refused to see the Titanic, under any circumstances. Well, then he decides to, and I can't remember what her disability is, but
She also
they,
has a disability, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Their relationship is almost primarily over the phone. Through, they haven't. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they've ever met before. So
It
he
wasn't clear
decides,
to me
yeah,
100%. Yeah,
it
but
wasn't exactly 100% clear if they've ever met before, but they primarily talk to each other over the phone and share their love of movies and sort of connect over that. So basically, he decides to go see her, and he doesn't have the help of an assistant. And so, but he's got it all figured out. He's broken it down into like 5 steps. It's like, from here, from a cab to the train station to it's like 4 stops, and then to your house. And so the film is basically him trying to get to her. And again, I won't spoil it because it does take a turn. Uh, but I think where the film succeeds, it really puts you in the place of the protagonist, of his main character, and you get to experience, at least on some small level, of what it must be like to live visually impaired.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I enjoyed this. I saw it through the South by Southwest, actually, online screenings when I had the pass for that film festival. This is definitely one that's been making the film festival circuit. Probably wouldn't make my top 10 of the year, but I could see why you liked it so much. It was pretty impactful. It was a little hard for me, honestly, to watch in parts when some bad things start happening
mhm,
to me, just because I worked in disability area for so long, and it's just really hard to see people getting
yeah,
basically, assaulted or harassed due to their disability. It was just
yeah,
really,
yeah,
really hard to experience that on screen, but also necessary. And also, I think it was showing he's kind of a stubborn guy. Like
mhm,
his fan, people are trying to tell him, well, you should just wait to go see her until you can have your support person with you. And he's like, no, no, I'm going to do this. I can do this on my own. So he just decides to go and do it, and he's taking that risk. And but I mean, and then what happens is sort of traumatic, obviously, but the fact that it's partially because she wants to watch Titanic is also just kind of a funny part of it, because he's never seen it, because that's not his kind of movie, but he does own it, so which is also funny. He owns a lot of movies he's never
yeah,
seen, so
yeah. If you ever seen the movie The Diving Bell and the Butterfly,
yeah, I've seen it.
it's very similar in the sense that it puts you visually into sort of the space of the protagonist,
Hmm.
and this does that very effectively and very well. And I agree with you. Yeah, the last third of the film is very tough to watch, but I think a necessary part of the film. And watching it again for the second time on a theater with an audience, it just felt even more impactful.
Yeah,
And people were walking out of the theater just absolutely dazed, and you go on this roller coaster of exhilaration of him, and you're rooting for him, and then it takes these turns, and it really is a ride that he goes through and that you go through with him.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely. Do you know if this one has any distribution,
I don't
or if will
know.
it ever get distributed?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I think
I did. I looked it up and I couldn't find anything about it. So I hope it does get distribution. Obviously, it's been at a lot of film festivals. So
yeah, yeah, hopefully it becomes one of those films that plays enough festivals and gets enough buzz that someone will pick
hmm
it up and put it out. Because yeah,
yeah,
I definitely want people to see this and experience it. That's another one.
experience.
It's again, I felt like this was sort of a visceral experience that only cinema can provide.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, so we'll move on to our next movie. That's also yours.
Yeah, so this is a sci-fi film called Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes. This is a Japanese film directed by uh, Junta Yamaguchi. This I actually saw at not South by, at Fantastic Fest last year, and then again it's making the festival circuit. This is it's a real lo-fi sci-fi um time travel, sort of time paradox film that's all in one shot. And it's kind of hard to explain. It's it's not your typical time travel movie of where like, oh, I'm gonna build a time machine and oh, here's this thing. Um, the way the time travel happens, I don't think is fully explained. It's kind of a weird thing of where basically this guy has this, he sees himself in this computer monitor, and I think it's, was it 2 minutes into the future, and it's this very bizarre thing start happening when he can see himself and interact with himself from 2 minutes in the past, 2 minutes in the future. Uh, but the way they do it is, I have no idea how they did this, because it happens in real time of where he's talking to himself and you see the thing through via a monitor, just kind of like how we're doing now. But then we see the things from, you know, his point of view, and then eventually we catch up to those 2 minutes, and then we see the things again but from the point of view of his future self. But they able to do it in a single take, as far as I could tell, with no editing and no CGI. I mean, it looks very much like 90s home video, like kind of a digital, like that look.
Yeah, it looks kind of garbagey. I
It
thought I
looks
didn't
kind
like
of
the.
it looks
Yeah,
kind of garbagey, which I think, you know, is deliberately on purpose, almost like this, not really a found footage, but almost like this kind of like surveillance video type thing, you know,
hmm
which I think really fit the aesthetic of the film. And again, um, you know, a fan of, you know, I love sci-fi. I love all kinds of sci-fi, but when you can do sci-fi on a budget, when you can do sci-fi without sort of this, you know, sci-fi is more than just robots and lasers and everything,
right.
which is what I like about the lo-fi sci-fi, which is what I really like about this film.
I didn't love this film, I have to admit. I wanted to like it more. Maybe it was partially because I had just seen Everything Everywhere All at Once,
Yeah.
where I was like blown away by the visuals and the idea of the multiverse. And then I watched this one and it just looks like crappy 90s home video. But you know, the and I found it, even though it's actually a pretty short movie, I got kind of bored because it's sort of the same thing over and over. And because he's watching this version of himself 2 minutes in the future on this TV, then he goes around to find out what's going on the other side of the TV, and then he goes back again, and it's kind of looping back and forth. I was just like, oh my gosh, you know, this is kind of tiresome. But there's some fun aspects to it for sure, which I could. It actually reminded me of a movie I liked more that also I watched this one on Amazon, and it there was one that came out a few years ago that I reviewed on the show with a different co-host who likes kind of low budget sci-fi, and it was. And I can't remember the name of the movie now, but it was only showing on Amazon Prime. But it was one that was set in Arizona, and it was like these weird sci-fi things happening, but it was also very low budget, like no really special effects or anything, because
Mm-hmm.
there's not really anything that's special effects in this movie other than the fact that there's this weird time loop thing happening. I mean, that's really, and the editing, which I kind of just thought the way they did it was they probably shot all that footage previously that they're showing on the TV and then put that on the screen, and then he's looking at himself on the TV. That's how I thought they did it, but I
Yeah,
don't
I
know
think.
technically.
Yeah, I agree with you to some extent that it does get a little tedious. I think towards the middle, it does get a little repetitive. I mean, that's the nature of the film. Uh, and But like I said, I think exploring these sort of time loop, sort of Groundhog Day ideas in a very fun and unique, interesting way, I think was why I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it does show you can make a creative movie on a low budget because there's only like two settings really in the movie: his
Yeah.
apartment and the
And
restaurant.
then
That's
the
it.
little, yeah, the cafe or whatever.
The
Yeah.
cafe, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not really, and there's, you know, some good actors, but other than that, it's just
Yeah.
there's not some huge big production, you know, budget.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, you know, Blade Runner or something, you know. So
And then, like I said, you know, I like the idea, you know, so many filmmakers who are just getting their start out, who, maybe have limited resources, limited budget, they don't do genre film because they think they need money to make genre film. So I like to see science fiction movie done on a budget. It still
Yeah.
has, clever ideas, clever things to say, but can do it with what looks like a home camera from the 90s.
Yeah, exactly. So our next movie is along the lines of genre movies. This is another genre movie that made the film festival circuit and it now is on video on demand and on streaming. It's called Hatching. It's a Finnish movie by Hanna Bergholm, and I believe it's her first feature film. And I just watched this actually last night, so it's fresh in my mind. And I know you saw this at the film festivals, and luckily I got to stream it through video on demand. And it is about a young girl whose mother has this beautiful, perfect existence that she's documenting on her blog, showing how their perfect, beautiful suburban family is perfect in every way. But as we know, there's darkness underneath. And the little girl finds this egg in the forest and starts to take care of it. And eventually it hatches into this monster that's sort of like the dark side of herself, basically. And the monster starts to do very, very bad things. And so there's a lot of fun to be had in this movie. I thoroughly enjoyed this one, actually. It's another one that just kind of whizzes by. It's like 80 or 90 minutes, but it's kind of like body horror done right. There's no CGI or special effects. They actually used puppetry animation, which I really enjoyed, to create the monster that starts off looking kind of like a demented bird and then morphs into something else entirely as the movie goes on. And we've seen these kind of movies before in terms of like critiques of idyllic suburban existences and things. But I also loved the fact it was this perfect little girl who's trying to do everything to please her mother and can't, and then it starts to unleash this dark side of her, which I enjoyed that storyline quite a bit. And the actors I thought were all great.
Yeah, I thought this is a really fun movie. Like you said, body horror, but also we're getting all these horror films that sort of deal with female sexuality in a very
Hmm.
interesting way, and sort
Like
of the
Titan.
yeah, like the power of female sexuality and almost how um in some aspect there we fear female sexuality, and then
Hmm.
in some ways that it's a power that women have that men don't, and it's just very interesting that we're getting all this slate of films that sort of deal with female sexuality in a very interesting way within the horror context.
Yeah, I definitely could recommend this one. It is available on streaming, so I encourage people to check it out. Maybe not a 4-star film for me, but certainly a 3.5. So these were some great picks. Thank you, Ernie, for joining me on the show once again. It's always great to have you on. Do you have any film festival scheduled for the summer?
Yeah,
Summer is kind of a low film festival period
it
usually, huh?
is. It is. I actually leaving for Austin in a couple of weeks. There's a Latinx festival that I do, and then yeah, summer's kind of a low period, and then we'll be back to the fall festival. Telluride,
Okay.
Toronto, all
Well,
those.
well, maybe you can come back on the summer. We'll just review some normal non-film festival movies or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you once again. As always, this has been Real Film Snobs. You can check us out on our website. We're on Facebook, YouTube. Please hit that subscribe button so you can always be notified when we have episodes. We have a podcast now on Anchor. We can check us on CC Media in Salem, Scan TV in Silverton, Corvallis Access Media, KMUZ Radio, KMWV Radio, and a whole bunch of other places, I'm sure. Again, thank you, Ernie. Thank you all. Have a great day and great movies. Bye bye.